fact that pool testing resumed this past week. And results from that kind of trickled in, and across the state there were issues where typically it might be 24 to 48 hours. Last week there were schools that pool tested on Monday and did not get results until Friday. Some of them that pool tested on Tuesday got results on Thursday. I know that information was shared from the nurses to the state to sort of talk about that as an implication of trying to catch cases within schools and follow the protocols, and information was shared. So, we'll see how it goes this week. We have schools that pool tested today and others that will start tomorrow, and we'll see if that time is changing. So I want to make sure that people are aware of that. The SOP, as you know, was updated at the end of December, and the nurses met and the administrative team met, and I had conversations with Dr. Crevens, and I worked on over the weekend developing, and you'll get it tonight. There will be 2 pieces of information that will go out to the board and families, that sort of an update and reminders for the SOP. We accept all the changes within the SOP that came out, and I wanted to sort of point out some of the major areas of changes. You get to come to school, but you would quarantine from community events. Same thing at the school. If you're school enforced, which we do a masking policy, you would have to community quarantine for 5 days and continue wearing a mask. If we have a masking policy, it is suggested that you mask in the community as well. That's a recommendation of the CDC. Outbreak was defined as the 15% of students and staff absent due to illness. That is based on the state's previous communicable diseases touch points, and then there were guiding documents about sitting down with the CDC and deciding whether or not that meant you had to go remote or not. That isn't the standard cut point. You hit 15%, that doesn't mean you automatically go remote. There are other factors that might lead into whether or not a school needs to go remote for a period of time. I wanted to share that in the news this morning. There were schools in Southern Maine, high schools, I know Brunswick went remote, and those decisions will be made on a case-by-case basis with principals based on what's happening in that school. There's a variety of factors that can lead to the need to go remote, whether that's staffing concerns, whether that's lack of students, but no specific point. And the CDC documents that drive that are in the SOP have some really good guiding questions to sort of help you move through those questions, whether that's something that you would do. What I'll be sending out, looks something like this. It's basically taking a 6-page SOP and just shortening it around some really specific items so it's easy for community members to be able to read and understand. I know that has been a concern all along, that not being able to know what it says because there's so much information there. So in this revised piece, I talk about attendance and the importance of using the screening tool, and that was updated. Talk about masking and how it's important that if somebody is not wearing a well-fitted mask, they might be asked to then put on a well-fitted mask and one that the school will provide. I talk about the positive cases and what that looks like, and go through the close contacts. I also identify what an outbreak is as defined by the SOP. Talk about the importance of pool testing. There's no change in the SOP, but I think it's important that parents have an opportunity to read why that's important and understand that they can continue to sign up if need be. And at the end, I just sort of talk about vaccinations, and I put together a letter for families that will identify the importance of vaccination within our community, why we're asking for folks to do it, and the various sites where people can go to get vaccinated. So the hospital will be doing a clinic in January on the 22nd, on the 22nd. So that information is in there for people to be able to sign up. And that's for any level of vaccination that somebody wishes. So whether it's a booster or for kids 5 to 11 or teenagers, that will be covered at that clinic. I also listed at the bottom of that letter any of the areas within our community that provide vaccination for folks. so that they would just have one place to go, find the link and click on it, whether they want to go to Carol's or Hannaford and Ellsworth or Walgreens. But that information is there. It should be easy for them to go. And hopefully, one person uses it, that's awesome. But hopefully it just makes it a little bit easier. So those will be things that will go out tonight. I wanted to share just a little bit about the Osha Rule. The Supreme Court did meet on Friday of last week, and if anybody listened to that, the rule around healthcare providers, people were pretty happy about that, and that will probably go forward. It was iffy to see whether or not the rule for employees in situations of over 100, whether that will go forward. I'm still working on with Drummond with that plan so that we're all set just in case, but I just wanted folks to know that the Supreme Court met and no decision has been made, but it was just that, it seemed like one would probably go forward and the other one may not. Support staff agreements. The Bar Harbor agreement has been TA'd and is all set, and the district agreement with support staff, we're still working in negotiations on that one. So that's
not quite all set. Well, on the salary and
a couple other language pieces. So that's right. Yeah. Thank you.
it's in line.
Yes.
We're almost there.
We're almost there. And thank you for all of your hard work on that. Yeah.
I mean, there doesn't seem to have been any kind of public relations push occurring as far as the district, but people should know that we have a proposal on the table, and we're in the process. That for the other bargaining unit, that we have a proposal on the table and we are meeting regularly.
We had our first snow day, so I'm 1 for 1. Wanted to give a little calendar update in February. I will bring forth the calendar, and I just wanted folks to know that I'm in the process of setting up a meeting to consult on that and share that before I bring it to you, and to let you know that what that calendar is going to hope to do is to build on the growing and sustainability of teacher leadership within our district, and that sort of coincides into what Julie and Rhonda will speak about later on. So, we spent some time looking at it as an administrative team and feel really comfortable about how that calendar is going to move our staff and our kids forward in terms of the types of teaching and learning and opportunities folks will have. So that'll come up in February. Budgets are moving forward, and most have completed first drafts. And I'm learning at how many meetings the superintendent has in an AOS in those first couple of weeks of each month. So that's been fun. And we have our annual meeting on the 20th. It'll be in the auditorium, so please remember to come and vote for that. That was all that I had.
So the question, when you said that we, as a district, added the when someone stays home for 5 days, and then we add the antigen test before they can come back to school, is that school provided or is that the
School provided?
Okay.
And that the CDC does recommend that when you go to their website, the SOP made it as an option. But I think with the movement to 5 days, and there is science around that, but there's also information about needs to go to work and other issues around public health that are not just about health. There's issues of making sure that people go to work. And reasonably, people were a little bit nervous. And I think being able to add a school-provided antigen test for identified positives goes a long way to help relieve some angst. And the state just released, I think it was before the weekend or over the weekend, that they have purchased a large amount of antigen tests to be provided for schools to make sure that that supply is ample for, especially those places that are doing pool testing. And Maine is definitely a leader in that. And I think the state government is making sure that schools have what they need to make sure that they can stay open.
Based on the 15% cases for closure, are we anywhere close to that? Or I know there's people that are asking about knowing that other schools in the state are going remote.
I have not seen any information that has us near there at any of our schools. And because of the late arrival of some of the, the tests, it's been difficult to get everything really quickly, and nurses have been working really, really hard in terms of when they're getting their positive contact tracing. So I'll be working with folks to take a look at that and work with individual schools that I know that either large amounts of staff are out. And I met with the principal today to sort of talk about that and where they might be, and to listen to what their plan was if we could really get there. So I feel comfortable that I have that the principals have the pulse of their school and are ready to talk to me if need be, if we need to start making some decisions. I've enjoyed all the well wishes and support from folks in my new role, so I definitely have appreciated that, and look forward to working with everyone these next 6 months.
Sorry, I just had a question about the remote piece. Are there already defined plans for remote? And the reason I'm asking is because if I recall in September or October, there was like, we're not going remote, there's no plan to go remote. And so this sounds like a little bit different verbiage. And so I'm just trying to understand. So now we do have a plan if it does happen.
Yeah, schools always had plans, and prior to the break, I spoke with the 18 to make sure principals had gone back and looked at their plans and made any adjustments. They have always sort of been there through the end of last year. And in my role as principal, I worked with my staff to prepare those, and principals looked over those to make sure that if they needed to pivot, they could pivot.
Thank you.
Okay, this brings us to directors of teaching and learning. I don't think I need to project, but I just want to make sure everybody had an opportunity to look at the hyperlinks that were attached. Okay. So the first, I'm going to stand up so I can see over here. The first item I'd like to talk about is the January note. If you recall from our last presentation when we were talking about data, we did talk about equity work being a very big lift, and many hands make light work, and we were going to be really looking at empowering teacher leaders to help collaborate and lead this work. We know that throughout some studies that were done throughout the US in terms of which types of schools responded best during the pandemic, one of the indicators of successful transition of quick pivots were districts with or schools with strong teacher leadership teams. So, given our current conditions, that's another reason to support strong teacher leadership. Also, one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was RTI. That's this sort of edge-a-babble word. I actually really hate the name, response to intervention. That sounds so clinical. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about what this really means. And I think we at the high school board meeting kind of illustrated what we talk about when we talk about RTI in real terms when we're sitting at the table with admin and teachers. And it's really just responding to the students in front of us. We're not creating schools, we're not creating systems and then moving kids through it. We're looking at the kids in front of us and identifying the needs right here, right now, and designing around them. So if you recall, vaping was an issue, went away, now it's an issue, we're responding. We designed a really effective alternative education program at the high school, responding to a particular group's needs. It lasted for 3.5 years. It's not really the right design for right here, right now, and moving forward. So, and that's what we're talking about in teams. Teaching is a team sport right now. And part of the calendar that Mike was talking about was really about creating times for regular team meetings
Rhonda and I and the admin team certainly have a very strong view of like what we need kind of K-12 systematically. But when you slice it and dice it, there's a third grade, view that's a little different than looking at the K-12 view. And if you have a teacher leader supporting that direction, working with the K-12 vision, you're just going to have more effectiveness. So that's our real rationale behind growing teacher leadership across the district and strengthening what we're calling our common study leaders. So similar to the high school language learning area leaders, but they have a different job responsibility. In that, we really want to support this work and invite people who may have never considered becoming a teacher leader. It's not about being the loudest or the strongest or the most gregarious. And it's really just someone who is willing to be open to learning about adult learning theory, going through some training to how to facilitate teams and to work with the district leaders, principals, and ourselves in the central office in propelling and moving this work forward. So that's our plan. We just launched it today, so I don't have an update on it. Any questions about the plan itself?
Teachers.
I don't know yet. I'm curious because in some respects we'd like some teacher leadership opportunities and want stronger voice. And then, given our current state, I'm not sure. So I'm just as curious as you. But you know what? If we're going to have to just respond, right? I mean, that's the whole point. We're responding.
Julie, I just want to add, I just left before I left my school, had a conversation with a teacher who said to me, thank you. Like, it is about time. He was very excited about it. So that's only one voice, but I think felt kind of a sense of relief that, like, great, I have something that I think can be tapped into. I'm excited for this possibility. It felt like it. That's only one.
And we might have a variety of responses and we'll just respond. So I'm excited about it though. I think that, I think what this is a little different in past teacher leaderships, historical knowledge of this area, and it's really across schools in general. They tend to be, people who have been there the longest or the loudest or just did their degree and they sort of are kind of slotted as being the leader and everyone sort of just kind of defers. We're really trying to think about tapping into more, being more inclusive, maybe, the person who might not have considered it too. And then not having like Supreme Court appointments, right? Like now you're the learning area leader for third grade forever until you decide you're done. So that's typically how leadership has sort of been distributed in schools. And we want it to be cycles, 3 years, and then, bring in a new cohort of people. The more people involved in leading this work, I think the stronger would it be. Okay, EdTech PD. All right, I'm pretty excited about this too. We have like over 100 EdTechs in our district, and typically their PD has been just kind of dovetailing into teacher PD. So you're working in math classrooms, you'll do the math PD. But the math PD is really designed for the teacher, and the EdTech has a very different role, often as a supportive role. And sometimes can find themselves maybe not plugging into the PD directly in relationship to their job. So that's something we've always heard from EdTechs. So I'm not sure how this is exactly related to what I'm doing. Many of our techs are aspiring teachers, and we certainly support that and encourage them to continue to do their PD in that respect. But there's a very different role they play in the classroom. So we're really excited to take advantage of these 2 days in January, which are a little new for the district. They've been K-8 PD days and they've been regular PD days in past. Last year was the first year that they really replicated like the high school schedule, where they had a report card kind of day where they're wrapping things up and then a preparation for the second half of the year, which I would like to emphasize once again is really important. This is the responsiveness piece. You do take stock, you have lots of team meetings, you're looking at the data, and then you're reconfiguring items in order to respond to students for the second half of the year. It's a big lift. So to afford teachers that day is awesome, And it also gives us ed techs for 2 days without a particular plan. And so we put one together and we've designed 2 full days of professional development in partnership with the administrative team who gave us some insights on some needs. We didn't solicit ed tech input this round, but we will for the next round. It's part of our form. And the forms, how did it go? And then what would you like to know next item? So we did design some with some choice and some with some requirements. We're doing some work on tech dependency, which we're pretty excited about. The state has launched a lot of really awesome PD, and the state is going to be partnering with us and talking about tech dependency and supporting students that you're working with who might be experiencing tech dependency. We are talking about language, words matter. We're talking about supporting math in the classroom, but you have some choice. If maybe you're not an ed tech who is working in math, you might have some other choices. So that document I sent you is not complete. It's live. The links aren't quite there yet, but you'll see more pop up on it along the way in the next week as we prepare. So, and we intend to actually make this a thing. One of the things that we've certainly talked about is that our ed techs work with some of our most marginalized students and disadvantaged students, or need a tremendous amount of support, and we invest the least amount in their professional development. And this is a real opportunity for us to change that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Can I just say, I think that's one of the best reports I've heard at a school board member meeting. These are things we've been asking for, and it's great to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda and Julie. We'll now turn to our report from Manager Eric Todd.
So while Eric sets that up, just coming on board, I think one of the important things to remember in terms of when you add a new position within a structure like the AOS, there's the important part of learning and building relationships with a multitude of players as a part of that job. There's sort of understanding the process that each of the schools needs to go through in terms of building budgets and how that interaction is with bid creation in a timely manner. And so to sort of help with that process, from my perspective coming in, I wanted folks to know that Eric and I met this morning, and we'll be meeting weekly on Fridays to sort of talk about where we are with the various aspects of his job and the importance of making sure that he has time to come, and whether it's every month or every other month, to sort of talk about where he is, what are the things that he is working on, so you guys are all aware of what's happening in all the schools. So I wanted to make sure that you all know that I'll be supporting him on that weekly basis and helping to sort of learn that process so he can be effective with the principals for the purpose that he was hired. So I look forward to have a chance to look at the presentation over the weekend. So
I added a few more extra slides
there you go.
on you.
Thanks.
Hopefully that's right. Hi, everybody. Okay, it's like my second time being here. So I'm gonna, like Mike says, I'm gonna give you a status of what we've been doing or what I've been doing with all the schools that's been happening. And I know there's still quite a bit more that's going on. I hope you all can see this. If you can't, you can go ahead and fall asleep. Okay. So at the high school, we've gone through the process of getting an architect for the school to do the library and the science labs upstairs. So what they've been doing now, the architects come in and taking out ceiling tiles, checking the electrical, and checking the heat and the ventilation in the school in those areas. So they've been doing all that. For Collins and Emerson, we got to gazebos to set up. We got a truck that they're going to get, F-350. That's been completed. For Mount Desert Elementary School, we're looking to do a garage on the outside so they can do for storage. Just have some bathrooms in it. So I got a gentleman coming out a couple of days, going to give us an estimate on what that's going to be. We have some older sheds down by the fields. They're trying to combine them all together and put them into one. We had a music, in the music room, the window was broken, it's a round one. We set that up. We got somebody that's gonna come in and do that, which will be probably put in glass. Pematic, we got the stairwell done. Went out for bids and we got that done this, what was it, last month. Did a really good job. It looks really nice. A lot of air was coming through those windows. I just can't believe the condition of what they look like now. It's so much better. We're doing an ADA plan for the entrance because if you go into Pematic, you got a couple of stairs, then you go in, then you go down a couple. So we're trying to do it so you have wheelchairs or any handicap can go through. They bought a bus this year, probably be out in February. We're also looking into replacing the ceiling tiles and the floors upstairs in the school. Fremont, we got a bid for the chimney. Got to be replaced. The top is coming off, and they recommend it taken all the way down. And we also got a budget, a bid for the where the tops are. I mean, the driveway for the buses. It's in really bad shape. And same thing with the playground. I think that's important that we get, especially the playground done. It really needs it for the kids. Water filtration in Trenton for the PFAS. And then we're looking at metal roof and also asphalt for the roof. Now the outer islands, I'm sorry to say this, I have not met Tammy yet. I don't know if she's here, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on all three schools there. And you know, the biggest problem I have is getting bids out there, trying to get people out there that want to give us a bid, especially right now in the painting area. If we can get them all four of them done at the same time, we'll get a better price. I went out for 3 people on the painting. I got one guy that said he would do it, but now I got to get him out there and for him to spend a day and a half trying to figure out how much it's going to cost us. We'll put in lock boxes in all 4 schools with a key in it. So this way, if we go out to the islands, certain people will give them the code and they can get into it. Okay. All 4 playgrounds, they all need work. All of them, every single one of them. Actually, I should go back to Connors and Everson. Their playground does need more work on there too. So, for all the schools, we've been looking with the IT department. We've been going for cameras. Well, first off, camera. Third, when I work with IT on this one, cameras. I got to get cameras on all the buses. Okay. Pematic has them all on. We want to get some more on the rest of them. We need the budget for that. It helps us so much, protection of the kids, the protection of the drivers, and we really need it. Security system is what I've been working with IT, the cameras. There's certain areas, certain schools that don't have cameras, and also the same thing with the doors coming in and out. Phone systems also, especially, I know Connors and Emerson, they need it. Their system is 13 years old, and you're eventually not going to get parts for that. And I know we can't do it this year, but we got to do it as soon as we can. The state requires us to do PFAS through all the schools that have wells. Okay. And we also got to do lead testing. We've already started that, and that's got to be done through all the schools. And the way lead test is done for every faucet that anybody drinks water or cooking or whatever you may use, or ice machines, they got to be tested for lead. Started that project with all the custodians. Superintendent's office, 2 things that I looked at. One of the things I looked at was office space. Tried to see if we get a portable outside where the superintendent's office is, because I don't have an office. So, and there's no store, and we're missing a lot of storage space. Okay. All right. Now the transportation. Okay. We have a free software package from the state of Maine. The state of Maine offers a free, which is called Transfinder. And in Transfinder, there will be some components that I will have to purchase to help us with this whole project. But majority of it's going to be free, but there'll be a couple items that we want to add to our plans as we go along. Okay, so I started training on October 4th. We loaded the software, got login information. Did a 4-hour training with all the state of Maine people that users that have transplant. Then we do it, and then there's a 10-hour self-help. Completed 5 hours of that. And then there's an 1-hour individual session. So I'm sitting down with an individual and they go through each one of the processes. And I'm hoping to finish it by February, all the training. We've loaded the data from Power School, and the biggest problem we're gonna have with this is if garbage in, garbage out. So if I don't get data that's going correctly for any of the students, it's gonna be hard to keep track, and we need to have that as accurate as possible. We're not gonna get there 100%. I'm an IT person, I used to be, I was a director in Connecticut, and you'll never get it always 100%. But at least if we can get it at least 90%, that would be good. The data is downloaded right now every night from Power School to Transfinder. So after training, we build the routes, test the routes, and then what I'm going to do is have the bus drivers look at the routes, because you know they got history that even though the software says you should do it this way, you still have history that no, you can't go down that's the one way, or possibility it's a dirt road. So these are the things we will be doing. I'll just put the map on there. As you can see, this is the territory here. You got a school way down here, and I'm just wondering how we can better do the routes for especially the elementary school there. And you got it in different ways. So what can we get from this? For us, we're going to get better route configurations, capability to track the buses while on the road. Right now, the high school has no way to communicate to the bus driver. Okay, the other ones like Pematic, Tremont, they have radios. Call the police department up here at Bar Harbor, and they say they can't get us a radio to the high school because when you cross over the borders, each town, you lose the signal, and that's one of our biggest things. Transfinder does have something that we can do, and we can set this up. So this way we can communicate back and forth between the driver and the school. Down below is actually dots that's showing where students are actually live, and then we start designing the routes. Okay, these are some of the apps. There's apps for parents called Stop Finder. That's one of the apps that we probably will have to purchase, which I think is there's more than just, it's called a geo alert for parents. What it does is it'll alert the parent that your bus is coming. It's about whatever diameter they put around their house. It'll tell them when the bus is coming. It's 5 minutes down the road, 2 minutes, so you can tell your child to get ready. Viewfinder is primarily for your principals and anyone in the school that the principal will allow. They can go into Transfinder and find information on routes or anything else they need to do in there. Trip Finder is going to be really good because we have a lot of issues, especially at the high school, getting buses. Trip Finder is going to give us a list of the buses so we can compare it to the trip and also the bus drivers and also any trips that they do. Plus, we're going to be able to set it up for right now with the drug testing, and there's a few other things. But also, we're going to be able to know that when a bus is due for inspection or any other thing that we set up inside here. All right, what we need. Okay, we need new bus drivers. We need some bus drivers. Okay, and right now we have a situation in Tremont where we did not have a bus driver to get the elementary kids to school. We have 2 vans, and I say we're lucky because one day was snow day, so we didn't have the issue, but on last Thursday, we did. So we need another bus driver at least to help us out to do any subbing whatsoever. It was hard. Again, I mentioned the cameras on the buses we need.
The town have the local boards approved cameras on the buses, or we go to approve?
I'm just saying, you're not going to put it in the budget this year. I'm going to set up the budget I mean, I'm gonna say how much it's gonna cost per each school. So like the high school needs cameras on all the buses. I think they need maybe 5 buses that need it. So we'll put it in for next year's budget for what we need. If that answers your question.
We do have a policy for cameras on buses. AOS, like that.
Because you do have,
Southwest and Trenton have cameras.
and we do have cameras on some of the high school buses, and also Sears has buses, cameras on all the buses. From what I'm seeing, especially Pennatic, it would be nice to have a mini bus. And the reason why I say that, they're doing the pre-K. They're using a large bus to pick up just a small amount of kids, which would save you on gas. Vans, that van there that I'm showing you, another school system has that van. If we purchase any more vans, I feel that this is the model we need to go with, something similar to that. Because it's easier getting it out with the kids with backpacks and stuff like that right now. And right now, I have a van driver that's going for his license for a bus driver. I really don't want to lose him, but I have no slot and there's no budget to put him in. But I hate to lose him. Right now, he's going around picking up ACTC kids, and then he's going to pick up elementary kids. And then he's also taking another kid to ACTC because of the schedule and the way it works. So we've got a lot of crossing and swerving with the buses and the vans and everything like that. So because of the way you are set up in the sense of you have ACTC and some special needs, and then where we're located, and we have one person that's going all the way to Bucksport, who we drop them off at. Actually, a parent right now drops their child off at in Ellsworth High School, and then that Ellsworth High School bus takes them to Bucksport, then he comes back. But it's a big, huge to do and to try to get it together. I'd like to see if we can get some more e-buses, which is electric buses. The one that we have now works great. Biggest test will be tomorrow. It's going to be so cold, so we're going to see how that works. One of the last things is the driver's pay. You know, you guys probably know this, but your drivers do an excellent job. And I'm going to say something. You have one driver right now that has cancer. They go to treatment, and then they come back, and they still drive the bus. It's unbelievable for this individual to do that. And just so we're not out of, so we can keep going because we have nobody else to substitute for it. And this is, you know.
I just have a question about this slide in particular. Is this, presumably you're giving us like a warning of what may be on the budget next year, but it also seems like it must be in some level a high wish list, considering we don't know, like the root software may.
Correct. May correct some of this, yes.
Okay.
Yes, the root software right now may correct it, but right now this is what we're kind of going through. I do see like it would be nice to see a van like this go for Bar Harbor because they have no vans. It would be nice to see something like that.
When you say driver pay, I mean, I'm all for paying the drivers. Are you speaking about like the drivers who are like part of the collective bargaining agreements, or like substitute driver pay, or just all driver pay?
I came last time and I did this sub drivers,
Uh-huh.
which we brought that up.
Right.
Which was really nice, which really helped us because we were going to lose 3 of them. And this time it's more of pay scale and what they're doing and how much stuff they're doing. I just want to emphasize we need to bring their pay up too. I know nobody wants to hear that, but what they do and how they save the kids and how they drive is just, and the routes the way they are now, yes, it may improve. I'm hoping it's going to improve with the software, that we're going to be able to see things that we didn't see before. But I'm just praying that you know, because the kid right now, they do sometimes get to certain schools late, and it's because they are very cautious. And safety comes first.
Can you be a little more specific when you're talking about the pay? Because I know that you know that the Bar Harbor School has contracted rates through SEER, and the elementary schools have a pay grade that's based on an ed tech scale, for lack of a better term.
Right.
So have you looked at both of those agreements and you have specific recommendations
Not
for why
right
you
now.
think certain pays are less than more? Or is that forthcoming in your recommendation after you look through, install the software, get that running? And so too with the specificity about which school needs a minibus and why, and which school needs it. So this is just broad brush strokes,
Yes,
and there's going to be very specific recommendations, so that are going to be forthcoming
correct.
based on the very different circumstances that
Correct.
among different drivers in terms of whether or not they're contracted through SEER or working at the elementary school on a different scale.
It's, yes, because a lot of these issues could be solved with the software.
Right.
Okay,
But then the pages thing, I think, are really pinging that that's a really different, that's a hard broad brush. You know,
Yeah.
that's going to be, we'll really need to hear some drilled down information about that based on what the very different scales are that are being used right now.
with this presentation that I'm doing, I was trying to keep it low as minimum as possible. So I didn't want to get into total details exactly, but just to let you know that these are some of the things I will be working on and moving forward. That's the biggest thing.
Where you advanced too far. The slide where you talked about the 3 Finder modules, I'm assuming that those are all pay for modules.
You talking about those?
Yep.
No, Stop Finder is the only one. The other two come free with the software. It's just that I wanted to show, there is a couple more, because one of the things that I want to do too is that, which I didn't mention, I'm glad you asked me to go back to this, is that we have bus drivers that we need that, okay, I'm gonna go and do your route. I have no clue where to go. No clue. I can't find it. I have a list. It says do, just 111 Maple Street, 120, Main Street. I have no clue how to get there the fastest way or anything like that. The Transfinder, we're gonna have, what I'm envisioning is to put, we have the capability to put iPads on the screens like you do with GPS. With each one of the dots, they'll let them know where they're going and how to do the route. So that's one of the biggest things that I can't wait to get going on. But again, we're going to take baby steps. We're not going to jump right into this. We're going to take baby steps in the sense of, get the software going, get the routes going, everybody use it for a little while, and then move in to try it. Because that's all I hear is from a lot of the drivers is that I don't know that route, I don't know where the kids are. And then we get calls that they haven't picked up kids, or they, or they came too early, they came too late, something like that. Go ahead.
The timeline for implementation, that slide, was you going to be done with training on February 14th and
Right.
begin thinking about implementation? Or when's the implementation in terms of when this will be, people will be hitting the roads with the new software routes for trying
I
these
will
routes
be,
out?
okay. I design software in my previous life. Well, with software, you want to do a lot of training. That's exactly what they're doing here. I'm not going to say that when we put it out there, it's going to be on a trial basis to make sure it works and train. I got to train everybody on what's going on. Not that they're going to see the software. It's the point that you want to train them to understand what they need and why. So it's going to take a few months. If anything, my projection is in September, when we start the school year, that they finally have understand everything that's going through. Training is
I need to clarify. So in September is when they'll be starting to use, potentially trying out new routes, or
No. We're going to try, that's why I want to try the routes this year. But they're going to try the routes just as a test, not while we're picking up kids. We're going to try the routes and see if it's going to work.
that's what I'm asking. What's the goal for that timeline to try those routes out if the training is ending September?
In February, so in March, I want to, because I have to test out right, then in March, I want to see if we can go through with the bus drivers, so they visually see it, and then probably April, we start doing the routes and seeing it, but not physical routes, but in the sense of picking up the kids at that time.
Right, thank
I
you.
want everybody to get comfortable with the song. And again, I'm not gonna just turn around and just say, do it. Just put it on in there and say, this is the way you gotta go. I wanna make sure they feel comfortable with it too. Any other questions? All right. One of the other things that's gonna help us, which I'm telling you, a lot of the schools are doing right now, sharing the vans and the buses. They do an excellent job in doing that. There are some areas we still need to improve on that, but it's really helpful. It's like Pemmican called me the other day, they said they needed a bus because one of their buses broke down, they had to get it repaired, so they borrowed one of the high schools. So it's nice that we do that, and I'd like to see more and more of that between the vans and the buses. Same thing with sharing bus drivers. We have quite a few bus drivers, not quite a few, we have 3 of them that do, that are custodians slash bus drivers, which help out in certain areas. But then again, when we cross over to the towns, if I wanted somebody from northeast, they won't know our routes, and it's very hard. And that's why I hope the software is going to help them a lot. Okay, the other thing I found out when I first started this job, that there was some of this stuff from the high school that a lot of the bus drivers did not know the routes before they started September. They just kind of winged it and guessed which route they're going to take. And now what I'm trying to do is emphasize from all the schools is to say, whatever it is, we need to get the data in, whatever we need help with. I want to find out the issues about it. So this way we can try to get it in by August. So we know when the bus drivers come September, and we pick up the kids or end of August, whichever it may be. The other thing I noticed is that when we get the Swans Island vans, and I'm talking about kids that we pick up from the boats to get to the high school. What I noticed about that is that they, in turn, we have a bus that goes by there. Not that I want to get rid of this Swans Island vans, it's just that we have a bus that goes by that could pick them up. But it would be good to use the Swan Island vans somewhere else with this process, because like I said, we have kids that need to be picked up on and off different areas. The SEER busing, we'd like to see that we move towards our own ownership of the buses. I know there's some bus drivers that will probably move this way from Sears, so I think we're going to investigate that and we'll try to move towards that, because you are spending a lot of money on that issue. Okay, that's why we're standing with you. So the last one is island boats. We have issues coming from the islands coming here. Kids miss it coming here, missing it going home. They have to wait. There's just so many issues that we're having. So what I did in investigating, I called the state of Maine Transportation and asked them why we don't have funding for a boat. I call it a bus boat. We have funding for certain areas for a regular bus, but we don't have it for boats. But there are some things that are for safety reasons, and there are some issues that we're having. So I have a very big concern about it. So they're checking into it for me right now, and they put call the Transportation Magazine and see what they can do to help us out with that also. I don't know all the details. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I'm just working on it right now. So.
Are you talking about mostly like Cranberry Isles, or are you talking about Swans too?
Well, right, both, yeah. Right now, I know Cranberry Isle is asking for one. I'm saying they'd like to have a vote because they're concerned that they're gonna have a lot of concerns. It'll be nice, and I've talked to the harbor master, asking requirements, what we need for that, and go from there. I'm looking into a lot of this stuff. questions?
Are you in consultation with Bill and Bunker? I know there's been a lot of kerfuffle, I've read about it in the paper, about some anxiety about the bus, the boat situation, the mail boat. And I know there's been, so are you speaking with Bill and Bunker? It's a very hot topic right now, and there's a lot of worry because Bill and Bunker is down on one boat right now in general. So this may be a really heightened time where people are reaching out saying, I'm worried about this all of a sudden because they're worried about sort of community issues that are going on. So
I'm not looking at it because of that reason. I'm looking at it because I think, like, again, for bids, for the island people, it's hard for them to get out there for something to do a bid. If we had our own boat that said, okay, hey, take this person out there. There's also the bids. There's also if kids want to do practice for sports. They got different things that could be on an island, drama or music. Some of them have to spend the night here. Maybe that's not a big issue, but I'm just investigating just to see exactly if it's going to be worthwhile.
Does the, with the Transgender software, are you looking at any routes that are incorporating more than one town, whether for the high school or at the elementary as well?
Yes.
So is that something that you expect will expand more, that we'll have more sharing of routes so that multiple towns are being picked up?
Yes, because like I was showing in this drawing here, you've got northeast down here where the school is somewhere in this location. I know they take buses out up here.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that we can try to group a lot of this together. Maybe have a drop off. But again, it's all speculation right now. I have to wait till I can get the program going and see if that's the way it'll go.
I think my daughter, I live in Tremont, and I think my daughter's got a couple of kids on the Tremont bus that she rides that are being picked up from Southwest Harbor. So I don't know if that's
Southwest-
becoming more common or if that's always been.
Yeah,
the
that's
case, but-
common here. These
Yeah.
two schools, they work together really close and picking up kids and stuff like that. And not to say the other ones do that in some areas, but I think we can still improve on it a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah, like if you look at Northeast Harbor and Otter Creek, you know, there's some kids in Otter Creek go to Bar Harbor, some go to Northeast Harbor, but if there could be a loop there that hit both schools,
Yeah,
you know,
right,
that might be a way to
Right.
better incorporate one bus rather than two.
correct. Yeah. And again, this software, just because we're gonna get it, it's free and all that stuff. Again, it's not gonna work 100%. No software does, but at least it can get at least 90% of it done for us. And make it easier to understand a lot more than we don't. And it's part of, part of sharing. That's what the whole thing I feel is that we need to share different routes, combine them, busing, drivers, everything. So this way it makes it much easier. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry it took so long.
Thank you. Eric. That brings us to updates from subcommittees. So the superintendent search committee is coming along. The applications are coming in. So basically, we'll have a lot more to report in the next couple weeks after the application period closes. On the 28th, right? And so the committees are more or less, there's a couple, but more virtually formed for screening and interview. And Susan has the breakdown of the first one.
Yeah, it's the same makeup of each committee, but we have different people in the mix, save for the search committee, the board search committee members. So 5 community members, parents in each, 8 administrators, and 14 teachers and support staff in each screening committee and interview committee, so that as many people can have a hand in the process as possible.
I would say it's a real balancing act because we're such a large board and we serve, and our AOS has so many different schools and so many constituencies who are trying to make sure it's a democratic process with every stakeholder, but also reasonably a process where that could actually happen, you know. You can have maybe up to 60 people or something. I mean, you could, but I don't think that would be a good idea. So we, you know, been striving to find that balance. A letter went out if you want to, if that lists the mandatory trainings that people must attend. One is on the 19th, and then the other one's February 3rd. Is that right? That are like interrupting bias and trainings that are either by law or by our AOS policy. One must participate in order to be part of any, in order to review any applications or participate in interviews or anything like that. So Brian, any questions? At our next meeting, hopefully we'll have a lot more to report on that. The next subcommittee is middle school, which is on a hiatus. Hopefully, I can get together and get going again. Now that as we turn towards spring, reorganization planning. Susan and I have a plan to get together and get Ingrid's and Todd's information, or whoever else information to sort of, I think it is clear, like in everything from transportation to collective bargaining, that to superintendent searching, that we do need to think about the possibility, merits and possibilities for reorganization. So if you're a board member who's interested in exploring that process, please reach out to me or Susan, and we can talk further. We're hopeful we can be ready to move forward soon. Yes. The anti-racism task force has been meeting. We met last Thursday, and I think that a lot of good work is, you know, it was a little slow starting this fall, but now it's well underway. And I know that the task force is, you know, anxious to know what the, sort of the results of the presentation that was made to the board. And so Julie has been coming to meetings, which have been really helpful. Just sort of help, because a lot of the work that, even though the board may have signaled our support for, like, we are obviously not the implementers, that happens at the administrative or school level. So helping to sort of translate to the committee what work is actually underway and what work is about to be underway and what work and who's doing that work. So I think it's been successful. Julie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say this is like the second iteration of the team, and I think they're working out the kinks of leadership structure. And so they've got their, it took a little while, but they got their two co-chairs, and they're going to debrief meetings with me and then pre-plan the agendas, and they get feedback from the team and take turns in facilitation. And so I think that's why there was a little bit of a slow start. There's always, you know, that this takes time.
Right. And one great thing is there's a lot of student leadership, which is great, but it also requires the need for like training on facilitation and things like that, which I think are an agenda for planning and which are such valuable skills for, you know, people to be learning. And I'm really glad that that's how it's being done, but it does lead to different pacing. Okay, that brings us to discussion items. And I think Rhonda is prepared to lead this part. First, we'll have the first reading of policies, and then we'll move on to action items if there's some first and final readings. So,
thanks, Jessica. So this first group that are under discussion items are policies that are part of our regular review process, and then the transgender and gender expansive student policy is a new policy that the policy committee is bringing forward to this group. And these are all for first reading and for us to discuss, and then we'll come back in February for the final reading on them. So the first one is walkers and riders. And the policy committee made some revisions primarily on this policy because we needed it to be more in alignment with our practice. Really, the building principals are the ones, the superintendent and the building principals are the ones who, and now our operations manager, who look at routes and bus stops and scheduling for those. So in that second paragraph, we're proposing to change that language so that the superintendent or their designee is that overarching person who looks at the information. And then down in part 2, under the walking policies, part B, we needed to add in now that schools are including pre-K in the bus routes and on the bus stops. We needed to have that language in the policy. So pre-K, and then actually that kindergarten and grade 1 right at the beginning of that paragraph, there should be another pre-K in there, just like there is highlighted further down. And then on the back, number 5 is just the original wording was kind of awkward, so the policy committee changed that to clarify it. In number 6, but the addition of the pre-K, we deleted one of the that the school committee reserves the right, because we talked about the superintendent earlier. And then that final paragraph, I guess we stopped at the policy committee because when Mike and Selena and I looked at this today, we realized that that last paragraph, it's not in alignment with the very first paragraph up at the top. So we, there aren't any changes in that last paragraph for tonight, but instead of school administration, we wanted to clarify and say principal, and instead of school committee, it should say the superintendent or their designee. And then just school committee, it really should be MDI RSS AOS 91. Are there any questions about the walkers and riders policy and the changes that were made? Yeah.
Just the inclusion of the school board in the very first sentence. It doesn't appear to have been replaced.
Thank you. Yep, jumped right over that one. Good catch. Moving on. The EEAEAA, the drug and alcohol testing of school bus drivers, and then the procedure that goes with it. EEAEAAR, like EIEIO there. Drummond and Woodson has said that we should replace our current policy with updated policies on both of those. And so both of those have been linked into the agenda. Are there any questions on those? And the policy committee is bringing forward a new policy on transgender and gender expansive students. What's going on in our country and our state and our district, it was time for
I
policy.
do have some questions on that, because when we discussed that a couple years ago, we decided that it should be best left to a administrative procedure rather than a policy.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, we couldn't make it to the meeting, but what made the difference to decide to do it a policy rather than the procedure?
Just the change in times, it's amazing what a couple of years can do. And it's recommended that schools have a separate transgender policy now.
And I do have some questions about, it says, and or their parents or guardians. What if their parents or guardians do not support their transition? What would the school do based on that?
Well,
Because I think currently, from I understand, all child has to do is say they prefer
yes.
or change it. And I'm wondering, because it is a delicate time in somebody's life, and it's saying that they should have meetings with the administrative staff, and I think that might be a little much to be asking somebody to go have a meeting to discuss their gender expression when they're, especially if they're just starting to transition. So I'm wondering if, because once it goes into a policy, this is how it must go, not how it's recommended to go, or how, there is no wiggle room. So I do have some issues with those type of things.
Sure. So we could,
I think I interpreted it more as like it would be a student guided. I don't know if that's really true. Maybe I was reading.
Because my understanding as a policy is this is how it must go. And that's why we've always gone with a procedure rather than a policy. Because if we say this is how it should go, then this is how it must go. So therefore, they must have a meeting with administration. And, and their parents, if they're not so much supportive of that transition, then they would have an uneven say, in my opinion, of how the child would be referred to. And I'm sorry if I'm misspeaking, that's my understanding.
I agree with everything you're saying, Dwayne, and I would like us to have a policy because I think it telegraphs our commitment. But I agree that we might need to work on our policy a little bit.
I have issues where, saying that they must have, a meeting, and then,
Right.
I'm concerned if parents have to get involved. It's something that is a delicate thing within the family unit.
And I don't know, in that first point, on that second page, in transgender student and or their parents, and I don't know, and that's language that we can check at the policy committee about, and with some, but that means it can be just the child, and you don't have to have the parent to make sure that
Yeah,
is written well and understood, so you're not just saying automatically, well, the policy, we have to meet with their parents. If there's no
yeah,
agreement
but
there.
even meeting with the administration, somebody who's, already concerned about how people are going to react, and now has to go to, administrator's office to discuss.
If requested, the other two.
it's not a must.
Yeah, but from what I understand, this is how it has to go. If it's a policy, that's why we requested to keep it as.
And the policy committee meets again on the 27th, so that's
And I'll plan on
before
being there.
the second reading, so we could bring it back and have another discussion at the policy committee meeting.
I had some similar concerns, and then I reread it, and the second paragraph under purpose, and I don't want to read it, but I'll paraphrase. It basically says, this policy is not intended to anticipate every possible situation, blah, blah, blah. Administrators and school staff are expected to consider the needs of students on a case-by-case basis and utilize this policy and other available resources as appropriate. So it sort of gives it, it's not a, there's a lot of wiggle room in there to sort of take the good parts and not the bad parts on a case-by-case circumstance. So that alleviates some of my concerns that were similar to yours when I first read it.
We'll keep working with it and bring it back again. If appropriate to the next meeting. Are there other questions? Or are we ready to move on to the action items? Yeah.
With respect to this policy, my child hasn't been here in a long time, so quite a while. What's nice about this is that it reflects forward movement in the community and in the society, so you're not working in a vacuum. If you're a child who has concerns that they'd like to discuss with someone and have needs, particular needs met. And so I do think there's flexibility. I read flexibility built into it, but I think your concern is a good one. But on the other hand, I think this reflects that we're trying to make this a more normal and accepted part of the community. It's just a standard way now. It's open to everyone without it being some sort of, I don't know how to do this, I don't know what to do, and so on and so forth. It's more normalized now, which is what's good about it.
On to action items, which are first and final readings, which you know, we do just remind everyone when like there's been a law change, we need to act quickly within a time frame to bring it into line with the law, or sometimes for something it's just a minor clerical change. So probably not.
All of these policies are coming to us because of the law changes that happened in October. The ACAB and ACABR, the addition of familial status to that second paragraph where it lists out discrimination and harassment of school employees because of all of those, and then also ACAB. And then ACABR are the procedures that go along with these two policies. You want to?
Are there questions about these, or if there are?
You want to do all of them at once, or do you want to do these three where they're
Why don't we
connected and then the truancy one?
Two and then the truancy. Or three.
There's three. All three of them are changed by the addition of that familial status.
I think we can do them as a group then.
I move that we accept the policy changes to policy AC, ACAB, and ACABR.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, all opposed? Okay, did you get that, Selena? So that brings us to fluency.
And then the change on this has to do with really the grade levels and the years of age. It is at least 7 years of age, and they dropped that to 6 years of age. And so that's the primary change in this one.
If there are no questions about that, I would take a motion.
I move to approve or adopt JHB.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other business? Future agenda items, I know we'll return to more transportation updates and all of our regular updates, and we'll bring back the transgender and gender expensive policy.
Calendar discussion.
Calendar discussion, yes. Okay, next Thursday.
I just remember one thing. We've heard a lot at each of the local boards, and we see it in our own families, and we hear about it at the AOS, and we've heard about it in little chunks. The toll of the pandemic on the mental health of our students, especially, in addition to the teachers and everyone else involved in the schools. I think it was a year ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago, was the last time I think we've heard any sort of a report out from the folks that AOS hired. I'm going to get their names wrong, but the folks that we hired at the AOS level to help out with mental health services and counseling services across the AOS, and we're sort of going to be dispatched out to the schools. I'd love it if we could have some sort of a report out about the goings on of the last year. Also thinking about or rethinking how we're going to continue to address the mental health needs of students as this unfortunately continues to linger. It would be really good to hear from them and also hear how they're working with some of the schools have, like Connors Emerson has 2 full-time people. I don't know if Tremont does, but would also just be good to see how that comes together.
Yes. Thank you. Thursday, January 20th is the annual public budget meeting, and that will be in the auditorium. And I hope to see there. And then our next regular meeting will be Monday, 14th of February, Valentine's Day, where your hearts will be trading cards, but that can be. COVID appropriate nonsense, please. No, I would take a motion to adjourn.